Hello, this is One Partition Studio here. So this is my 20th episode on my coding game series where I solve algorithmic puzzles on easy difficulty. The puzzle that I'm going to solve is called rectangle partition. So I have to use arrays and loops to complete this puzzle, and if I click on, for example, arrays, it will tell us the definition of it. So arrays is a data structure that allows to store multiple values. Usually these values share the same type, for example integer. Each element of an array is accessed by the index. So this example right there. So I'm not going to read the whole thing out, so that's just because it's not really necessary, because the first two sentences literally describes what it is, but that's what an array does. So if I click on loops, it will tell us the definition of that. In computer science, a loop is a programming structure that repeats a sequence of instructions until a specific condition is met. Programmers use loops to cycle through values, add sums of numbers, repeat functions, and many other things. Loops are supported by all modern programming languages, though their implementations and syntax may differ. Two of the most common types of loops are while loop and for loop. So that's the example of for loop. That's the example of while loop. You can also use for each loop, but that's not common, unlike the while loop and for loop. Let's read the goal. There is a rectangle of given width and height, which is W and H. On the width side, I've been given a list of measurements. On the height side, I've been given another list of measurements. Draw perpendicular lines from the measurements to partition this rectangle into smaller rectangles. In all sub-rectangles, include the combinations of smaller rectangles, how many of them are squares? So the example right here. So the whole width is 10, the height is 5, the measurements on x-axis is 2 and 5. The measurement on y-axis is 3. So the number of squares in sub-rectangles is equal to 4, because 1 times 1, 2 times 2, there's 1, 3 times 3, and there's 2, 5 times 5. Okay, let's solve it. I'm going to use Java. I haven't used Java for a while in these puzzles. Let's try it. Let's do it. So the first line includes all the width, height, and count x and y, which is all here. That's what it does. So line 2, which is this one, it is a list of measurements on the width side, and is sorted in ascending order. Line 3, which is this one, it's the same, but it's for count y. And the output, it prints out the number of squares in sub-rectangles created by the added lines. The constraints are 1 less than equal to w, and h is less than equal to 20,000. 1 less than equal to number of measurements on each axis is less than equal to 500. So that's the example right here, input and output. I'm going to get rid of this, everything, and I'm going to start from scratch. And the 3 imports that I'm going to use are input Java. We're going to use scanner first. We're going to use list, and finally we are going to use array list. So let's check what it does. So starting from the array list. So the array list class is a resizable array which can be founded in the Java utilities package. That's short for utilities. The difference between a built-in array and an array list in Java. That's what it is. Well, it's it's more in depth, but we don't need to talk about that. So for list, the Java util package contains doesn't really. Okay, yeah. So this represents an order sequence objects. That's what the Java utility list does. And lastly, for scanner, let's check that. So the scanner class is used to get user input, and it is found in the Java utility package. So that's what it does. Okay, let's start. Let's start with the class. So we've got to do class solution, and I want to use public static void main, which is always, you have to do this regardless, otherwise it won't work. Okay, now let's include all the integers. So int w, next integer x int, and let's do that for the height, count x, and count y. So we've done the first line. First line's done. But I forgot to include the scanner. So scanner in. Let's do that. Equals to new scanner system in. Done. Now we can do it. Now we can go to the next stage. So I want to add two lists, and let's start with, let's call it segments in width equals to build segments. Let's do the width first. So in w, which is going to be countX, and we're going to do the same for y. So y, which is going to be the height, so counts y. Oh, not y, sorry, h. Okay, so that's done. So it's going to work, it's going to be height. Okay, done. Okay, let's include the result. So int result equals to 0. Let's add a for loop. So for int, let's do segment h. So seg h for short, and we're going to use segments. Why is it ws? Let's do segment. No, not segments. Sorry, let's do build segments. So build segments in w countx. I'm struggling here. No, what we? No, this is not right. This is not right. Sorry. This is not right at all. Forget all of this. Let's do int seg h, short for segment h, and I want to do segments in height, and I want to add another for loop for the width. So let's do seg w, short for segment width. So segments in width, and what I want to do is basically do an if statement. So if seg h is equals to seg w result plus plus, and then let's print it. So let's do system out print line result. So let's check what the two equal sign does in Java. So it's called equality. So the equality operator is a type of relational operator in Java used to check for relations of equality. Okay, yeah, actually, yeah. So both equals method and the equality operator are used to compare two objects in Java. So the equality is an operator and equals is method. So it matches. So it has to match. So if this match, then we're going to increment it by result, and we're just going to print it out. And this is not working. I don't know why. Cool. Oh, wrong indent. That's why. Has to be up. Has to be in here. Right. So that's one stage done. Now I want to add a private method. So instead of public will be private. Let's do private static list. I want to add an integer, and I want to use build segment and include the scanner, and include the width. So int w, int countX, and let's use a list. So list integer segments equals to new array list. So that's done. And now we're going to add the segments. So segments add w, and I want to add another list integer, but instead of segments we're going to add measurements. So measurements, and add that to a new array list. So let's add the measurements. So measurements dot add. Let's add the 0 first, and then let's add the width. So measurements add w. And I clearly spelled measurement wrong in the first one. Should work now. Great. What's wrong with this? This method must return a result type. Okay, we can easily do that. This one. So let's add a for loop. So for int I equals to 0, I less than let's do countX. Let's increment I. And what I want to do with the for loop is include int x equals to int, well, in next integer. So what that does is it scans the next token of the input as an integer. So that's what it does. And we don't need that. So let's use that as a semicolon. So let's do another for loop. So for integer, let's do movements. No, not movements, sorry. Let's do measurement. And in measurements, we're going to use segments dot add. Let's do the math absolute. So that's what it is. So it returns the absolute value of an integer value. So if the argument is not negative, the argument is returned. If the argument is negative, the negation of the argument is returned. So let's do x minus measurement. So that is done. And now we're gonna add measurements to x. So measurement add x, and we're gonna return that. So let's return segments, and that should be done. Yes, it works. Okay, that works. Let's submit it. Alright, 100%. Okay, well, thank you for watching this episode, and I'll see you in the next one.